Firstly, it's always a pleasure to be working with like-minded individuals who are also friends. So it's a real pleasure for me to be on this platform provided by Melinda and Wayne and all of the volunteers and everyone that helps to put this together. So just really excited to be here. And I've shared my screen and I hope everyone can see my slides. You just drop a comment into the chat just to make sure that you can see the slides. Good. Wonderful. So a little bit about me. I run an angel investing school, which trains professionals from all backgrounds on how to get started with investing into startups. And the real primary goal there is to widen participation into this asset class so that people can participate regardless of what background that you're from. And then I also part-time run a product management consulting organization that works with companies that are in highly regulated industries to help them set up new product teams and work in agile. So I'm very busy wearing two hats, but enjoy when I can to give time back to do talks like this to support entrepreneurs. And I started my entrepreneurial journey about 10, 11 years ago during the last financial crisis. And I started a company called Mixtape Madness with my brother and a few friends. And my brother's actually still the CEO today. And one thing that was true then, that is still true now, is that as an entrepreneur, your primary job is to solve problems for customers through creating products that customers love. The real thing that's changed now in this crisis is not necessarily your values or your virtues, but the different nature of problems to solve for your customers, given that they have different pain points because of the change in environment. So one of the key things that I just want you to take away from today that is more important than ever now to kind of get out of the office, as the phrase goes, and to speak to customers early and often to really make sure that you're addressing their most pressing needs. And today I'm going to share a few lessons from companies who have responded quite proactively during COVID in order to remain profitable. So Michael Moritz, the general partner, a founding partner at Sequoia, said in the FT newspaper last week that businesses around the world will never go back to the way things were. Okay, businesses fundamentally changed because of this crisis. And not only that, like we can't go back necessarily to the way things were. You know, so we can ask these questions such as what will happen to our restaurants, to our bars, to real estate agents, to landlords, teachers, key workers, parents, families, and how we operate in our everyday lives. COVID-19 and this economic downturn is one of the things that firmly sits outside of our control. It impacts our work, our families, and our livelihoods. And for some business owners, it could result in 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months of no revenue. Okay, and that goes further than the business. That impacts how we live and how we operate within our families and in the wider world. There's no value in speculating when this will end because no one has a crystal ball that can answer that question, okay? And technology has advanced to a point now where we're more connected than ever before with the rest of the world, okay? So during this crisis, there's a positive in that we can connect like this over technology like Zoom and with our family members such as grandmas and mothers and fathers that live in disparate locations. But there's also a ripple effect that we all feel from this crisis too. Recently, the Troll movie was released, Troll Movie World Tour, right? And I've got a 3-year-old daughter, so bear with me. I'm very up to date and current with kids' movies, okay? And what was fascinating with this release from Universal was that over 5 million rentals were streamed of this movie with this digital release. It was scheduled to come out in the cinema, but because of COVID, they pivoted their strategy to release it on video on demand, okay? And in just as little as 3 weeks, it's got 5 million rentals, okay, which outstrips the revenue that they got in 5 months of the original run of the Troll movies. The reason this is significant is because Universal retains 80% of the revenue from streaming online, whereas if it went to the cinemas, it would have only got 50% of its profits. So during this crisis, it's really important to understand the difference between a trend and a fad, right? This is a trend that's probably here to stay, in that the economics and bargaining power will now shift forever, okay? Let's look at another streaming platform like Disney Plus. Disney Plus had record numbers of subscribers with its new service, given that it's launched during such a challenging time where people are being entertained more at home. So we're seeing Netflix's subscriber numbers going up as well. But what people aren't aware of is actually that half of Disney's operating profit comes from Disneyland theme parks. And whilst the Disneyland theme parks are closed, Disney have decided to lay off 100,000 employees in order to save $500 million a month. So this is an example of the ripple effects that we're talking about. And it doesn't end there. If we think about, like accountancy companies or travel companies or oil companies, the ripple effects have impacted across industries. So what I want to touch on first is that it's really important during this crisis to really take stock of how this impacts you, okay? So I always talk about this notion of people before profits, because in the end of the day, it's the people that drive the value in your business. And without the people, we wouldn't have the value that we're creating for our customers, okay? And there's certain things that are outside of your control, okay? So within this crisis, an example of that is that we don't know how long it's gonna last. And because we don't know how long it's gonna last, it may be 3 months of revenue lost, as shown in scenario A. It may be 6 months of revenue lost, as shown in scenario B. Or it could be even 9 months plus of revenue lost, as shown in scenario C, or even 12 months. But the things that are in our control are the plans that we choose to take, given that uncertainty, okay? And plan A is no change to the plan. So I operate how I am today, accepting that I may have 3, 6, or 12 months revenue lost, and this is how it could play out, given the money that I have in the bank to operate my business. And then plan B could be if I reduce the cost by 15%, and plan C by 25%. This is the first thing that I did with my startups, to really empathize with them and understand actually what the situation means given their situation. And everyone's situation is different, right? So it's contextual. But I really firmly believe that you should screenshot this and take stock as to where you stand today, okay? And the first thing you do once you understand that is you need to be transparent with your employees now that you know your scenarios, okay? So if that means having discussions about furlough, it's better to have that early, right? Because it's going to impact not only the employees, but their families too. If that means, sadly, you're going to have to let go of staff, again, very important to be transparent and empathetic and having that conversation early, okay? A good example of that recently actually was Brian Chesky from Airbnb. And what he did that was masterful was that he really drew down to the values of Airbnb and this sense of belonging. He showed empathy, because he knew that it's important to connect with people as a person himself and not as a company. And he didn't hide behind that. And he was very proactive in his messaging, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, around the fact that he is going to have to make some cuts and it's tough. And it's not an easy decision that he's had to make. But he's also been proactive in speaking to his hosts who hold the house, who have the houses, those who organize experiences and trips, investors, partners, suppliers, okay? And being proactive in delivering those messages, even when they're tough, is the right thing to do as the leader of that organization. So it starts with really showing empathy, okay? And for a small number of companies, they may be in a season of growth and abundance. And if so, you can still empathize with your employees, because you can really consider, for example, a COVID training budget around what things can I do to support my employees during this time. And some companies have set up a training budget where, they're giving employees the freedom to, pay to learn a new skill, or to have a personal trainer, or to help them get into a new routine to help during this time of self-isolation. Like an excellent suggestion I've seen from one company last week was around paying for a life coach for their employees to benefit from life coaching during this time, okay? So be proactive and share where you stand as a company once you've taken stock of those scenarios and what those scenarios actually then mean for your key people, from your employees through to your customers, partners, and your investors. One thing I'll touch on when it comes to employees is around hiring, okay? And I share this often with entrepreneurs that experience is highly overrated, okay? In this time of crisis, especially, we should remind ourselves when hiring to hire for attitude, to train for skills where possible. Like most really amazing people that I've met in this life and worked with, did great things when they did it for the first time. So we shouldn't, especially now, think about hiding behind iron gates, looking for someone that's ex-McKinsey, ex-Goldman Sachs, or certain credentials, went to a certain institution, college or university, or had certain grades. You know, we shouldn't, a lot of companies right now have taken the approach of taking a step back in hiring because they've been looking at internal processes as how do we onboard people? How do we make them belong? How do we make them feel a part of the company? How do we hire for the right skill sets? You know, but in the reality of this crisis is that it breeds actually new opportunities. Now is a chance to try those things out. Now is a chance to learn how to do that differently. The other thing that I share with a lot of founders during this crisis is that it's important to recognize that it's cheaper to retain existing customers than to acquire new ones. Okay, I'll repeat that again. It's cheaper to retain existing customers than to acquire new ones. In fact, during this time, a lot of startups have been pulling the brakes on acquisition costs and paid acquisition, because the truth is the customers' priorities have changed. Therefore, you need to understand how to reach them and in the most effective way during this crisis, you know? And the truth is there is an opportunity for a narrow set of people who can actually get paid ads at a cheaper rate. For example, in the travel industry, a lot of travel companies are not putting paid ads out because they're dealing with this crisis. So actually ads are at a cheaper rate because of that, right? But on the flip side, most people need to focus on retention because of the cost of losing a customer, okay? So I'm gonna go through some examples of what you can do to focus on retention. Is that 2 minutes? Something like around.
If you could wrap it up. If you could wrap it up, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
All right. Give me 2 minutes, I'll wrap it up. Okay, I just want to walk through some quick examples from some companies. One is a company called Leon in London, and they've done an incredible pivot to remain profitable. So there is a restaurant that pivoted to a supermarket during this crisis. And why that's brilliant is because now what they've done is they've sold stock that would have gone off, perishable goods. So they've pivoted in order to remain profitable, okay? Another good example is House, which is a beverage company, and they distribute a lot through restaurants. So during this crisis, they've proven that you can do social good and give back too. So what they've done is they've actually done a campaign where they're giving 100% of profits to restaurants in order to help them survive. But also through doing that, they're creating awareness. So now a lot of those restaurants could become customers too, okay? I'm running out of time, so I'm just gonna quickly wrap up rather than go through some of the other slides. But I just wanted to leave you with this as well. During this time of crisis, as an entrepreneur, you're not a failure if you're not an entrepreneur. You're not a failure if you can't operate your business right now. Don't be influenced by the media, social media, or by fears of others or the ego. Like, there's no shame in returning to work. There's no shame in temporarily winding down your business if you need to right now, okay? In failure, we take our biggest leaps in learning, okay? So let's get away from this culture of always aspiring to be our own boss and sometimes demonizing careers. There's value in being on your craft and developing that domain expertise. And during this time of crisis, in order to pivot to become profitable, some people may have to take a step back from their business, and that's okay. All right, so I just wanted to just remind you that there's one thing in this world that no one can really beat you at, and that's at being yourself. So just remain authentic to who you are and continue to deliver value by solving problems in the ways that you know how. So thank you. I've run out of time, but please connect with me online, ask me questions online after. Thank you for your attention.